Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today we have with us Michael Morgan, and he has an amazing story and is an amazing guy. And I'm just going to jump right in and let him introduce ourselves. I will tell you before we start that we got on this conversation because I asked for people that wanted to talk about kind of erasing the stigma behind mental health issues in general. And that is how I got hooked up to Michael. So I'm just going to let him take it away.
All right,
Welcome.
thank you. Good morning, Tammy. Thank you very much for having me. I'm honored and very excited to be here. So, as far as my story, it's thank God not too long of a story for you listeners. I was born and raised in Long Island, New York. I graduated from Hofstra University with an accounting degree. I started my first day of work in Manhattan. Supposed to be exciting. You're embarking on this new career. It's first day of the rest of your life. Your college experience is coming to fruition now. And I was given a task at about 11 a.m. Fell asleep with my head in my hand. Immediately got up because the guy that was kind of teaching me was a little strange. I didn't really want to speak to him. Went over to a guy that I met earlier in the day, and he seemed very cool. We hit it off. I said, "What's up, brother? You like this?" He's like, "F no, I hate it." I said, there is no way that I am sitting in a cubicle spending the next 30, 35 years of my life doing this. It means nothing to no one. And literally, the first day at work was in my head the last day at work. So I kind of went deep, really started thinking about what it is that I wanted to do, what I enjoyed. I knew I wanted to make a difference somehow in life. I wanted to make my mark. I wanted to touch people. I just wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And law enforcement came into the foreground. And at that time, I wanted to apply to the FBI, but they were in a federal hiring freeze. This is back in 91. So plan B, I had met a friend of mine's brother who had just moved to Atlanta, Georgia. He loved it. Couldn't say enough good things about it. I said, you know what? I wanted to get out of New York, experience something new. I wanted to get some experience now, knowing that the FBI was going to be a few years until they started hiring again. I'm like, I'm going to apply to become an Atlanta police officer, which I did in fall of 92. I was then hired and moved down to Atlanta in August 93. And I stayed there for a little over 10 years. It was an education in and of itself. I love the action, but it was the zone three where I worked was nicknamed Little Vietnam. And when I
Hmm.
tell you that it lived up to its nickname, my first night out of the academy, I was in field training. It was a midnight tour. We started at 11 p.m. We worked till 7 a.m. By midnight that night, an hour in, I saw my first homicide. It was a crazy story. He was an Atlanta police captain who was on suspension. Um, he was he had some sexual allegations against himself regarding young girls. He had decided to pick up a prostitute that night. The girl ended up being 16 years old and then decided he wanted to smoke crack. Pulls up to the local drug boy on the corner, asks for his crack. The dope boy looks into the car. We call them drug dealers. We call them dope boys. He looks to the car, and who does he see but his 16-year-old cousin? When it's your time, it's your time. He pulled out his gun, head. So I got there about an hour later. It was, let's just say, a messy scene. And heard the story fairly quickly. It's amazing when you see news stories about shootings. By the time the police get there 5 minutes later, everyone in that neighborhood already knows who did it, why they did it, every detail. Getting it out of them is another story. You start speaking to people,
Right.
no one wants to talk. Homicide guys usually get calls later that night coming in, and people anonymously tell them what's going on. But I kid you not, within like 2 to 5 minutes, everyone in that neighborhood knows exactly what happened and why. So fast forward to 4 a.m. My FTO decides he wants to take a nap. I mean, it's tough working those midnight tours. So I was shocked that he told me he was going to grab a nap. I'm like, we're in the most violent city in America at the time, the most violent zone in Atlanta at the time, and this guy's sleeping. So I have my head on a swivel. I'm just looking around like, oh my God, I can't believe he's sleeping. Out like a light, seats recline. So with that, dispatcher raises us with 301. She's like, 301, start for a 50-4, which is a shooting in an ambulance en route. Before I could say his name, his seat was inclined, put the car in drive, punched it, and he grabbed the radio to copy the call. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like Superman. It was unbelievable from a snore to that, like instantaneously. So we go to that call, and we found a guy, gentleman, face down, excuse me, on his back, laying up, face up. He had been shot, I believe, twice in the chest. He was deceased by the time we arrived. And it was about 4 a.m. It was a little bit chilly, so there was kind of smoke coming off of his body. And like I said, eyes wide open. And one thing that always struck me, I've seen a ton of homicide victims, unfortunately, dead bodies, is I would look at their body like it's crazy. They were alive like 2, 3 minutes ago,
Yeah.
leading their life, whatever it may be, a good life, bad life, whatever, but they were alive and now they're just gone. It always struck me. So another one of my academy mates who's getting field trained by another guy, they show up at the scene. I look at him and I'm like, O'Neill, what do we get ourselves into, man? 2 homicides in 5 hours. And it never got better. I mean, I said I love the action, but it was insanity.
Yeah.
So
Welcome to Atlanta.
yeah, pretty much. If people only knew, like the Turner Field, which was the baseball stadium, was in my sector, so you'd see thousands of people going to these games, and it was in the hood. And we would constantly discuss, like, if these people knew where they were, sometimes they'd be parking their car like a half mile away. People who lived in the area would flag them into the yards and charge them $20 a park, and we'd have people getting robbed, shot. There was only so many places you could be as far as patrol, and I would just kind of look at these people, these unsuspecting patrons, but like, you have no idea what you've stepped into right now, and that was Atlanta. It was just insane, but I loved it. Um, I tell people it's hard to describe. You have to be a certain type of man, but there's nothing like chasing another man, another human, like hunting another human, especially evil humans. It just gets into your soul. It sounds weird, maybe if I'm talking to you or a civilian, but guys who've done the job and soldiers, like, they understand. So fast forward now to about 2003, I had applied for and gotten a job with my hometown police department, Suffolk County PD in New York. So I moved back to New York and did my next 19 years with Suffolk County PD. Unfortunately, I was injured on September 22nd of 2020. I was helping rather large person up the stairs. I was behind them, and I had to lift one of their legs because they had really big edemas. And when we crested the top of the stair, their foot started falling backwards. And this person was about 500 pounds, so we would have both been dead had she fallen back. So I just squatted down, kind of blasted her up the stairs, and instantaneously herniated 4 discs. Tried conservative treatment for about 6 months, but I needed one surgery, fix one problem, and then I needed a surgery the following year, and then I was medically retired. So really not of my own volition, but at the same point, I thought I was ready for his 30 years. George Floyd had happened, and the public had been turned against us, and I thought I was good. So as time started passing, I started getting feelings of anger, I guess, maybe depression. I guess I didn't take as seriously the fact that I was no longer this cop, and I was no longer part of this brotherhood that meant so much to me, and the camaraderie that I'm now missing. And it's gone forever. I mean, unfortunately, out of sight, out of mind. You keep in touch with some people, but for the majority, everyone goes on with their lives. And I guess I never really gave that its just due and really thought about what it meant to not be in that position anymore. So as this is going on, I got hurt in 2022. I got retired hurt in 20. I got retired in 22, pretty much 2 years to the day. I'm not allowed to work anywhere else during that time. I'm not allowed to volunteer. I'm not allowed to go to the gym. They have a unit that actually watches guys who are hurt. They'll videotape you. They'll present videotape evidence if you get in your car. I've seen it personally, too fluidly. Like, he got in there, look at him. He's not hurt. He got in his car smoothly.
They're trying to prove that they don't have to pay you to be hurt on the job. I got you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I mean, especially in this case. I mean, let's lay all the cards on the table. There are guys who fake it, but I have, serious back injuries, 2 surgeries. Everything it's on MRIs, it's on paper, so to speak. It's not like it's being faked yet. They whatever they do what they do. So at that point, when I'm retired now in 22, I still had to go through a workers' comp case, which took another year. Again, couldn't work, couldn't volunteer. There was a guide dog foundation down the block from my house that trains dogs for veterans. I would have loved to have volunteered for them. Couldn't do it. There was nothing I could do. And I'm a very purpose driven individual. I had no purpose at that point.
Mm.
So I'm pretty aware that I'm not feeling myself, but I'm not sure at this point what the cause is. And, I was short, I would be short of my wife. I was kind of isolating from friends. Just wasn't happy. I was never suicidal, never in this deep, dark depression. But just to give you an example, I wake up like today, I'm feeling great, I'm happy. But a thought would get in my head and it would kind of disturb that happiness and make me unhappy for the rest of the day.
Mm.
I've since, reached a higher consciousness, and I'll talk about what I've gone through to become where I am now. Knowing now that mindset is everything. Mindset
Yeah.
controls the way you live and look at your life. And if you look at everything from a negative perspective, that is the life you're going to lead. If you look at it from an opposite, empowering yourself perspective, whereas the universe put me through this for a reason. And even if you don't know what it is at that time, go through it. If it's painful, heal through that pain. Unfortunately, I was not of that mindset at the time. My wife was. It was funny. She's always been to this higher consciousness. Um, she's into Abraham Hicks and all these motivational
Hmm.
speakers, and it was nothing that I didn't occupy that space at the time. I never made fun of her or anything like that. I thought it was great that that was something she was into, but I didn't think it was applicable to me. Maybe it was
Right.
ego. Could have been definitely. Unfortunately, a lot of us alpha males have an ego that's healthy, and in some points maybe a little bit unhealthy. Um, so to get back to the story, as I'm going through this again, I'm aware that I'm not myself, but I'm not able to process why at the time
Right.
until I watch a Sean Ryan podcast. Sean Ryan is a former SEAL, former CIA contractor. He's got a big following on YouTube, and he's doing an interview of another Navy SEAL named Eddie Penny. And Eddie is recounting the story of an incident called Extortion 17, in which a Chinook helicopter went down and 17 SEALs were killed, as well as all the personnel aboard, the flight personnel aboard the helicopter. But Eddie's talking about escorting his best friend who was in the crash and had been killed. He's talking about escorting his best friend's body back to his hometown. And Eddie, as he's recounting the story, is visibly upset, and rightly so. And as he's doing this, I don't know what it was, if it was the universe or what. I recounted a story of a call I had a couple of years before of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. And it just came to the surface, and I started crying like a baby. And to show you how closed off some of us are emotionally, my first reaction was to look inside my house and make sure my wife had not gotten home yet. I think she was out food shopping. That was my first reaction, because I wanted to make sure she didn't see me cry, because I felt weak. And that is my biggest message now as I go forth, and I'll explain everything I've been into when I speak to first responders and veterans. It is not weakness to feel emotion. It is actually strength.
Hmm.
There's immense strength in that. You could be a world-class warrior. They call them tier one, tip of the spear warrior, but still be able to feel and speak about it and help others. And at that point, I was incapable. Unfortunately, I grew up in a house. Looking back now, it was dysfunctional. I had a very tough dad. We had a very contentious relationship. I tell my wife to this day, I don't think my father and I, he's deceased now, had ever sat down and had a conversation. It was always my dad telling me what to do.
Hmm.
And, unfortunately, one of his credos was, you know, emotion is weakness.
Yeah.
Feel it, talk about it. I could probably count the amount of times he told me you love me. I'm not asking for a pity party. I'm just stating fact. I'm not a victim, nothing. He did the best he could. He was raised like that himself. But it creates this thing. I was a very sensitive kid, and to battle that, I guess I started learning how to callous up to not feel his pain. I specifically remember an incident. We were in a car one night, and he was going off about something that I wasn't doing correctly. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm probably like 13 years old. Why doesn't this guy like me? My teachers love me. My coaches love me. All my parents' friends love me. They're always telling my parents what a great kid I am. I have so many friends. This guy just doesn't like me. And at 13 years old, I'm like, you know what? I said, F him. I'm not
Yep.
listening to anything else he's got to say. It's going to go in one ear and out the other. And unfortunately, that's the way I began to live my life. I wouldn't listen to him.
You had
And
to. You had to survive, you know?
yeah, it was a coping mechanism essentially.
Mhm.
And it's amazing that I grew up with such confidence. I was never an anxiety-ridden kid. I never had low self-esteem. It's probably due to sports. I always got a lot of attention due to sports, and I always had a sense of humor, really good sense of humor. So I always had a lot of kids around me, and very respectful. So the parents always loved me. But I never, we talk about how siblings differ. They get the same treatment essentially, and one develops one type of personality and the other, a totally different one. And just mine and my sister's journeys were very different as far as attitude, I guess you could say.
Right.
So, I learned early that that was the way I was going to cope with pain, was to kind of shut it out. And again, back to Eddie's story, as I'm listening to it, I immediately realized, because other calls now started popping up in my head that I had buried. We call them compartmentalized. It sounds like this fancy psychological term we use to neatly
For
put these
suck it
things in
up.
a box. Yeah, they're never going to come out again. We know exactly what we're doing. And I used to say I was the best at compartmentalizing until I wasn't. And we just bury stuff. So all these things started popping up. And I'm like, wow, I think I have PTSD. It was that simple. And, I'm listening to him go on further with the interview, and he had used plant-based medicines to heal his PTSD and traumas. And it's not the first time that I'd heard Sean interviewing guys who had found healing through these medicines. And I can't say that I was that aware of them, but I started investigating them. And I guess I was still a little bit of a pessimist until I'm listening to Eddie, and I'm like, these guys have some of the strongest mental fortitudes in the world, yet they're coming back broken men from war. Whether it's PTSD, trauma issues, substance abuse issues, rage issues, whatever. But then they're all talking about using these substances and healing, and how it's, miraculous, and they can't believe what happened. And right then and there, I spoke to my wife. I said, we have to try this. Or I need to try this. I knew I needed help, but I didn't think traditional therapy was going to do it. Me talking to some guy or girl behind a desk that's never been through anything like that. Some of the things I would recount, I think they'd look at me like I was a psychopath. And, fortunately, it's just the name of the game. So we were actually planning a trip to Peru when we um, had planned last year to move to Florida at the end of last year. My wife was researching, and she found a center called Soul Quest in Orlando, Florida. And that's it. We moved here late December. We planned our ayahuasca journey the first weekend of March. Went to Soul Quest. I was definitely scared. I wasn't sure what to expect. You're afraid something's going to happen to your mind, and it's going to affect you somehow, and it's not going to go back to what it was. You're scared of the unknown. At the same point, I relegated myself to the fact that whatever happens, happens. I'm going to surrender myself to this medicine, which is what everyone in that space tells you to do. And whatever that medicine was going to show me, it was going to show me. If it was going to heal me, it was going to heal me. I was literally just kind of giving myself up, letting go, no control over what happened, and I was fine with that. And it was the most cathartic, profound experience I've ever had in my life. I tell people, as soon as I start speaking about it, it dilutes the magic. In some respects, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like you're brought to another dimension. And in my experience, well, many people's experiences, you're guided by a female, they call it Mother Ayahuasca, just a female presence. And if I could kind of recount mine, it was almost like we were outside, there was a big fire in the middle. You have alpine chairs that essentially encompass the entire yard. There was probably 40 people that drank that night, 30 to 40. Um, and you have like almost like Christmas lights that kind of outline the yard. So, it's decently lit. but during my experience, it was almost like a big screen TV, and Mother Ayahuasca's in the left hand corner, and I'm telling her, "I surrender to you. Please tell me what to do." I was in tears at the time, and I'm like, I need to lose this ego. I need to lose this rage. I want to become a more empathetic man. It's funny because I say this to my wife. It's like, you are empathetic. People sound like you're a monster when you say this, but I'm like, I wanted to be more so. I want to have more sympathy. I want to have more empathy. And everything I asked for was like given to me at the snap of a finger. Like you could feel your soul changing. It's so hard to describe it. That's the way I felt. And I remember specifically watching the volunteers and work, and they're there solely to help us in any way we need. And I'm like, these people are so graceful, they're so loving, they're so empathetic. I'm like, that's what I want to be like. And I, as I'm saying this, it's like I'm getting more empathy. I can't even describe it other than to say it was almost like another person was occupying my body. And at one point, Mother Ayahuasca was bringing my deceased father, to me in the journey, and it was crazy because they play music, and it stays like a steady volume, but this music in my journey is building to a crescendo, and at the end, it just stopped. And now the music is still only on, mind you, in the ceremony, but in my mind, it's not. And I'm just waiting for my dad to show, and he doesn't. After probably 20 seconds, I realize he's not showing, and I just threw my hand up in the air. I still remember doing it. You're lucid, but you're not. And I'm like, coward. I knew he wouldn't show. He cannot talk about his feelings. But instantaneously, that 55 years of everything between he and I was just lifted. It was just gone. There was no more ill will towards him. Um, there was just no charge to those emotions anymore. You still, you had your memories, but they did not hold that power over me anymore. And it was just incredible. And at the end of the journey, and I should have prefaced this by saying I had two coworkers and friends that had committed suicide 3 weeks before from the Suffolk County Police Department. A week apart, the sergeant actually killed himself in a precinct locker room. Um, but I had no thoughts about getting into helping others with these issues until I'm coming out of my journey, and it was a little like the universe was speaking to me, and the universe said,
Mhm.
"I healed you." Not that I'm healed; it's an ever evolving process,
Right.
but essentially healed you from that PTSD, so you could go forth and help these other men and women. It is now your life's purpose. And I literally said out loud, "Okay," accepted it, accepted it as though you and I are speaking like this. And I go, "It is my life's purpose," and kind of
Amen.
formulated a plan from there on. But that's exactly how it happened. It was that simple.
Wow.
It
That's
was
some,
powerful.
yeah, I can't even imagine. And it's, I tell that's the first step is to surrendering. I mean, that's literally, when you go walk into an AA meeting or recovery or, any 12-step program or whatever, it's just, you need to understand that you can't do it.
Yeah,
And that's the hardest part is just to say, I can't, I throw up my hands. I will take any help I can get right now. And
yep,
yours, fortunately, was instantaneous. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of people don't have that journey as far
no,
as one weekend and bam, all my problems are solved. But there can be those transformations that are instantaneous, small, and you know what I mean? It can be immediately, but the first step for everybody is surrender. I
yeah,
love it. I
yeah.
love it.
It is, and they say it's 10 years of therapy in one weekend. And although I was healed, it's still an ongoing process, and you have to do different things, whether it's integration or journaling or meditation. I shouldn't say or, like all of these actually. It's an ever evolving process, and you can go back to the way you were if you do not keep up with your healing and what you need to be doing. And unfortunately, a lot of other people will heal, but they'll go back into bad situations, whether it's partners that are abusing them or whatever the case may be. Fortunately for me, I was retired, so I wasn't even going back into that space. And I knew what a gift I had been given, and I still to this day I treasure it. And listen, I'm not a perfect human being, but I try to do everything I can to stay healed. And as far as surrendering, to your point, one thing I said to myself, because I started an Instagram page and that's how I first started getting this platform, that I will be genuine and authentic to anyone that listens, because I want them to see what it feels like to go through everything. As far as surrendering, I had a opioid addiction where I was taking a medicine called Tramadol. This is a crazy story because when I finally realized I needed help, I was trying to wean myself off these drugs. But what happens is these painkillers, when you do that, I would get down to like 2 or 3 a day, and my tolerance would go so low again that I would get that feeling that I love so much, and the feeling that it um, helped me escape from reality. At that point, my marriage wasn't good. My parents weren't getting along with her. She wasn't with them. I was trying to make everyone happy. Everyone was miserable. You know, it was a lot of components. Not that I'm excusing myself, but one thing, I've never done another drug in my life, so it can happen to anyone if it can happen to me, and that's what I tell people.
Hmm.
I remember being in rehab the first night, and I'm looking at my 3 other roommates, and I'm like crying to myself, like, "How did I get here? This is not me." But you know what? It was me at that point.
Right.
So, I surrender again, like you said, as far as realizing that I could not do this on my own, and it was humiliating to ask for help and to admit that I had this problem. And um, this particular night, this last Sunday night, I was taking so many, I had a few seizures. And on this last particular Sunday night, I looked at my ex-wife and I'm like, I need help. I can't do this. So she called my cousin, who's about 11, 12 at night. He came over, stayed the night. Next night, we had to go to my parents' house and I had to tell them. You talk about humiliating, walking in your parents' house and telling them that you're addicted to painkillers is, I've forgiven myself now. It's not who I am. It's something I did, but
Yep.
wow, it was just so powerful. So I want to let these men and women know, like, this is another area where if you have that substance abuse issue, trust me, I know exactly what you're going through, and you can get through it. Perfect example of staring you in the face.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do here is get rid of that stigma. Like it's not, like you said, it's not who you are. It's something that is happening to you. And there's no shame in that. And there's no shame in how it got you there. I mean, think about, I just look at the PTSD and the different varying reasons that people get PTSD and everything. And what just the Atlanta police with all those homicides and all in going to New York, how much you had to dehumanize yourself and your emotions to survive that in itself would require years of therapy if you don't know at the time going into it. And that's what it's like, let's talk this, tell those stories to people while they're in the field, while they're there experiencing this so that they can process it. It's the same thing with kids. So many times there's a school shooting and a counselor comes in and talks to them once,
Yep.
twice, and that's it. They didn't have time to process. They didn't have time to do anything. And then 8 out of 10 probably go home. And what is the mom or dad? I mean, God help them, but they're probably told, oh, the counselor came in, you're fine.
Yeah.
And we're not like, and it's okay to not be fine. You have to have a breakdown before you can have a breakthrough.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
But if we can avoid some of those breakdowns and like help people through them while it's happening, and I love that you came on. I love your story. It's amazing. So,
Thank you
and
very
everybody's
much.
everybody's trying to write down that place, ayahuasca. They're like, man, they're trying,
Oh,
you know
yeah, unfortunately, they just went out of business. They had a wrongful death, not due to ayahuasca. There's another medication called Cambo, and you're supposed to drink a lot of water prior to taking it. Unfortunately, this kid drank much too much water, and I forgot the medical issue when you essentially drown yourself by drinking too much water. But they had a wrongful death suit. The family won. They couldn't pay the damages, so he just went out of business. And unfortunately, it breaks my heart because there was so many people that were healed there. But when one door closes, another opens, and there are people from that establishment that are going to be opening their own, and I will definitely be promoting those. I'll tell you, great organization for anyone watching, for vets, first responders, and their families. It's called No Fallen Heroes. My buddy Wiz Buckley is a former F-18 pilot, started an organization. They are fantastic. You'll go on the website. If it's something you're interested in doing, you'll fill out an application. There's a waiting list, but they will get in touch with you. They heal through psychedelic means. So they heal using ayahuasca. I think ibogaine is just a few different things they use. I know they have centers in Oregon that they use, Colorado, I believe Costa Rica, and Mexico. And the only thing
Called
that
no,
you
I'm sorry,
are
it's called No
no,
Fallen Heroes.
yes, No
Okay,
Fallen Heroes. They're a fantastic organization. Wiz is just doing incredible work. He still has a jet, so what he does is he flies donors around the country. He raises money through that means, and then they support the organization through that. He just does phenomenal stuff. Um,
amazing.
yeah, so I love what he's doing. So if anyone, and one great thing he does is it's not only the vet or first responder, a family member is allowed to go as well. And that's one thing we don't realize is when we bring this PTSD and all these trauma-based issues home, we bring it to our families. We
Yeah,
bring it to our doorsteps, and they're going through the same exact thing in certain respects that we're going through. We come home and we're short with them, or we have these attitudes, or we isolate. They're going through the same exact stuff, and it's
yep,
not fair to them. They didn't sign up for that. One thing you want in a relationship is consistency. Just know what your partner's going to be from day to day. And they don't get that a lot of times. It's not fair to them. So, Wiz and his people are so smart in allowing family members to go to heal themselves as well.
yeah.
So it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah, and anything, honestly, anything in the mental health issues is always a family thing because
Yeah.
you can't separate it. You
No.
know, it's like you bring it to work, you bring work home. It's the same. It's all integrated all together, and yeah, everybody is affected, and that's
Yes.
why I love organizations that see that. I think we were talking the other day, and the national. So I used to want to just speak for children that have parents that are addicted and help them through some of the coping skills and how to empower themselves and be their own best superheroes and all that stuff. But what you realize is they still go home and
Yep.
all of those traits come right back and all of because the parents are suffering. So you have to heal the whole family unit or nobody gets better. It's
Exactly.
absolutely true.
Yeah. Things can
Absolutely.
be heartbreaking going to calls like that, and whatever the dynamics may be, you see kids there. And you're like, this kid is living this every moment of his day. You're supposed to feel secure as a child in your house. And I would tell parents, especially on BS domestics when they call us to play games with each other, your child does not feel secure when I'm in this house. I should not be here. Don't call us to play games. If you have to, please do so. I'm not telling you not to call us. But you think your child feels good? There's a 6 foot, 235-pound guy with double sleeves tattoos, wearing his police uniform, sitting in here right now. As nice as I am to your children, it's not supposed to be like this. It's a horrible dynamic,
Right. Right.
you know?
Well, hopefully we can help some of that too. We just need more people out there standing at the top of the rooftops and screaming about it and
Yeah,
letting people know that it is okay to not be okay. that,
exactly.
that there's help out there and there's people that care. I was talking to someone the other day and she's like, "Oh, you wouldn't understand, nobody's gone through this." I'm like, there isn't a story in the world that nobody else has gone through.
Yeah,
No, everybody has different stories, but nothing is mutually exclusive of everybody else in the world. Like,
yeah,
so there are people out there that understand on so many different levels. So power in numbers, power in unity, power in community. I mean, just there's so much to that. I love it. Love it.
absolutely. And I want to get what my biggest message is to tell people: no one's coming to save you. You have to take the first step. There is plenty of help out there. But if
Hmm.
you're going to sit there at home all day long and dwell in a negative and live in a negative and poo-poo any possible um, cures, so to speak, or healing methods, then that's the way you're going to be.
Yeah.
You have to take the first step. But there is plenty of help out there. There's plenty of us that have healed. There are millions of us that have healed. There are many millions more that need to. So let's do what we can to help these people. But you guys have to take the first step.
Amen. So, Michael, if people want to work with you, talk to you, get more of you, where do they go?
All right. So my Instagram platform is my biggest platform, which is essentially where everything emanates from. So that's Team Morgs Inc. It's as you see in the screen, but there is a dash in between. So TEAM underscore MORGS underscore INC. You can get me on Instagram. Feel free to DM me about anything. I actually have a great live I'm doing tomorrow with a man named Zach Ferguson. He's a retired Navy SEAL. I had seen a podcast that he did last week. It was extremely powerful. I'm not embarrassed to say I was crying during his. And I did a reel where I kind of acknowledged his and I acknowledged him. I tagged him. I told everyone how powerful it was. I was kind of just referencing the fact that if he could get through this, you guys could get through yours. And he had a very gracious reply. We started DMing. I'm like, listen, would you be interested in doing a live? He's like, I'd love to. He's like, I want to reach as many people as possible. And I'm like, that's me, brother. And just pure hearts. All we want to do is help. I know it's going to be a phenomenal live. So I would love for people to tune into that Friday night at 6 Eastern.
So I don't know if this podcast will be out by then, but is there any way, do you think it will be linkable so that I can add it to the show notes so people can see it down the road?
Yes, I can definitely try, but I am technologically not
No, you're
advanced. So I will
okay.
speak to my wife and we can
Yeah,
definitely
no,
do
is
that.
if it's something, have your wife text me and I will make sure somehow that it's linked up with my stuff so that people can that come to the podcast, hear you, can go find it. I'll make
Absolutely,
yeah.
100%. She would actually be a great guest too because she's a life coach. You guys occupy the same space. She's phenomenal. She's much better than I am. But yeah, I would definitely talk to her.
That's okay. Well, definitely. And all of these notes with the Team Morgs Inc. and all that, I will put all of that in the show notes. So if you're listening and you're trying to write down, do not stress it. We will make sure that you have access to that in all the show notes so that you can easily find him. And yeah, I think you gave us your biggest piece of advice. I always ask you to leave the listeners, excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat, with a piece of advice, but it sounds like you already gave it. Do you have another one or?
I guess my other big one would be, I've said before, empower yourself. Thank the universe for everything it puts you through. Do not make yourself a victim, especially if you're a warrior. Your mind is never going to reconcile. You're either a warrior or a victim, and you cannot mix the two. And talk to people. Lose the ego. Talk. We're human first. I had a talk with DJ Shipley. He's a former Navy SEAL Team 6, Tier 1, one of the toughest warriors in the world. And we had a big discussion about our individual plant-based medicine experiences and healing. And I said, DJ, we're humans first, no matter what a title is after that. And we're supposed to feel things. And now I do, and so does he. And we're both proud of ourselves, respectively, as men. Just talk to people. There is no tough. You're not tough because you keep that stuff inside and you have this armor on. It's weakness. Just feel that emotion. It changes everything.
Absolutely. So well said. Well, thank you so, so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are very welcome. And for everybody out there listening, I'll get you all the show notes. We'll get all the stuff. But I mean, he said it best. It doesn't matter what you've been through. You pick. You're either a warrior or a victim, and it is by far 100% your choice. Your
Exactly.
choice. So choose warrior. Absolutely.
Yes.
And you all have a very blessed day. See you next week.